South Korea hosts the 32nd Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, with the goal of boosting connectivity and growth in the region. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro reaffirmed his government's commitment to sovereignty and regional integration during the closing ceremony of the Greater Caribbean Parliamentaries Meeting for Peace. In Brazil, Favela residents protested to demand justice for the victims of the recent police operation that left more than 120 dead in Rio de Janeiro. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernandez from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. South Korea hosts the 32nd Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, with the goal of boosting connectivity and growth in the region. In addition to seeking to strengthen economic cooperation under the slogan "Building a Sustainable Tomorrow," the bloc encourages development through innovation. The event was attended by Chinese President Xi Jinping, who affirmed that international economic and trade rules need to be updated in order to reflect changing times and protect the legitimate interests of developing countries. Xi also highlighted the need to work together to build an open economic environment for the benefit of the region. The occasion was propitious for the approach between China and Japan in a meeting of their leaders, who addressed issues of common interest for the benefits of the people. Chinese President Xi Jinping expressed his willingness to strengthen a strategic and beneficial relationship with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, given that both countries have a great responsibility for peace and prosperity in the region and the world. In addition, Xi Jinping reaffirmed his willingness to maintain communication and promote the development of bilateral relations on the right path. Chinese President Xi Jinping urged members of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) Forum to Saturday to strengthen cooperation in artificial intelligence, green transition and social inclusion. Xi proposed the creation of a global organization for cooperation in artificial intelligence, with the goal of coordinated strategies, regulations and technological standards that guarantee the safe, fair and beneficial use of AI for all humanity. The Chinese president also highlighted the need to promote digital and green development as drivers from innovation and economic growth, and proposed accelerating cooperation in clean technologies and eco-friendly products. In other news, the defense ministers of the member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations reaffirmed their commitment to preserving peace to prevent the region from becoming an area of strategic competition between powers. During his speech to the Assembly, Malaysian Defense Minister Mohamed Khaled Noordin urged ASEAN nations to work together by committing to defending the spirit of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. This statement follows remarks by U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, in which he affirmed that he will firmly defend their interests in the Indo-Pacific, which is evidence of this concern about China's activities in the South China Sea. The Israeli regime once again violates the ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip, killing Palestinian civilians in a new bombing raid. According to Palestinian health authorities, a young man died when Israeli forces bombed his home east of Khan Yunis, while another died from injuries sustained in an Israeli airstrike. In addition, the authorities announced the death of a citizen and the injuries of his brother from bullets fired by the occupation forces east of Gaza City, bringing the death toll to 3. The Zionist army carried out demolition operations on citizens' homes east of Gaza City and Khan Yunis, where explosions were also heard. For its part, Israel released and handed over to the International Committee of the Red Cross about 30 Palestinian bodies with signs of torture. Medical sources in the Gaza Strip reported that the bodies were delivered by the Israeli occupation through the Red Cross. They also stated that this is the fifth batch of Palestinian bodies released since the ceasefire came into effect on October 11, 2025. Moreover, they asserted that most of the bodies showed signs of torture, such as burns and execution, and some even had their hands tied and their eyes blindfolded, while meanwhile others were unrecognizable. Meanwhile, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East continues to deliver humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The organization emphasized that its facilities in Gaza, such as schools and shelters, continue to operate to help families displaced from their homes by the Israeli siege. It also emphasized that its teams of social workers continue to provide protection, psychosocial support, and assistance to help affected residents rebuild their lives with dignity. More than 12,000 UNRWA employees in the Palestinian enclave work daily in education, medical care, and the delivery of humanitarian aid to the displaced. And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back From the South. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro reaffirmed his government's commitment to sovereignty and regional integration during the closing ceremony of the Greater Caribbean Parliamentaries Meeting for Peace. During the event, the Venezuelan president emphasized that the United States wants to impose a permanent agenda of war and military threats and psychological warfare on the country. For this reason, he called on the Venezuelan people to have nerves of steel. Furthermore, the president affirmed that the Venezuelan people will continue to live in peace, with a victorious spirit and in the construction of their own democratic model, based on full liberties. On the other hand, the president invited the Caribbean parliamentaries to accompany the Venezuelan people to the more than 5,000 popular assemblies that will be held on November 1st and 2nd, to prepare the projects that will be chosen during the 4th National Popular Consultation in Venezuela, which will take place on November 23rd.
Los supremacistas imperiales son los buenos.
They always say that imperial supremacists are the good guys, that they come to save us and bring democracy. Guatemala knows well how they brought democracy in 1954. Brazil knows well in 1964.
Bien lo sabe el Brasil, del gran João Goulart, 1964. La democracia que llevaron durante 20 años al Brasil.
The democracy they brought to Brazil for 20 years. Chile knows it well from Salvador Allende in 1973. The Dominican Republic knows it well from 1966. And the great Juan Bosch, Latin America, knows it well.
Bien lo sabe Granada y Maurice Bichot, nuestro gran Maurice Bichot. Bastante democracia que llevaron.
Grenada doesn't know it well. They brought quite a lot of democracy. Haiti knows this well. Martyr. Our martyr Haiti, dismembered by more than 10 U.S. military interventions over the course of 100 years.
Intervenciones militares gringas a lo largo de 100 años.
The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro emphasized that the distorted narrative of the United States about Venezuela is full of lies and false claims intended to deceive the sovereign peoples of the Caribbean.
Then there's that movie. Today, the world doesn't accept those movies from the worst of Hollywood. After all, Hollywood also has great actors and actresses, great producers, directors, and great movies. It's not the time to talk about cinema, but we could have a long conversation about Hollywood's contribution to universal culture. acting, and true cinema.
Siempre nos quieren imponer un relato, una narrativa. Hoy han elegido una narrativa absolutamente extravagante.
But they always want to impose a narrative. Today, they've chosen an absolutely extravagant narrative. I always try to discuss with my colleagues which concepts and words best describe each moment we have experienced. I can say that the narrative chosen by the U.S. government against Venezuela,
El poder estadounidense contra la Venezuela digna, pacífica y bolivariana es una narrativa
a
extravagante.
dignified, peaceful and Bolivarian country, is extravagant, false and defamatory of the dignity of a decent, hard-working people who have achieved great things for their country, despite sanctions, and all the pressure that we have all come to know over the years.
Que todos conocemos a lo largo de estos años.
In other news, on Friday, Venezuelan government requested the Supreme Court of Justice to revoke the citizenship of far right-wing leader John Goycochea. In a statement, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Justice and Peace said that the request responds to Goycochea's call for a foreign military invasion against Venezuela and the occupation of his territory. The Foreign Ministry and the Administrative Service for Identification, Migration and Foreigners will proceed to eliminate all documentation that identifies the far-right activist as Venezuelan. Goycochea is accused of persecuting and exterminating officials of the various security forces of the National Armed Forces, as well as of carrying out mass murders of Venezuelans. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump denied accusations of an imminent attack on Venezuela, which had been published by some U.S. media outlets. After some U.S. outlets reported on alleged military preparations against the Latin American state, Trump stated that he was not considering attacks on Venezuela. The statements to the press were made on board the Air Force One, following the question which sought to confirm the rumors. In addition, the White House spokesperson Anna Kelly stated to the press that the unnamed sources didn't know what they were talking about, discrediting the outlets which had published the alleged presidential decision. For its part, Venezuela insists that the constant threats are part of the psychological war waged on the country as a form of pressure. Regarding these publications, the Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, referred to them saying, "Your sources who claim to have knowledge of the situation deceive you to write a false story." We have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, but we'll be right back with more from the South. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Brazil, Favela residents protested to demand justice for the victims of the recent police operation that left more than 120 dead in Rio de Janeiro. Protesters denounced the death policy of Governor Claudio Castro, who belongs to the same far-right party as former President Jair Bolsonaro. Among the allegations are human rights violations, summary executions, and injured people. Furthermore, family members of the victims gathered in front of the regional government house to demand justice. The police action, announced as an operation to prevent the expansion of a criminal faction, became the deadliest operation in Brazil's history, including the deaths of 4 police officers last Tuesday. Moving now to Argentina, Guillermo Franco has resigned this Friday as Chief of Staff and will be replaced by Manuel Adorni. The resignation comes due to the persistent rumors about changes in the national cabinet. This is how the Chief of Ministers, Guillermo Francos, announced his resignation from an office in a post on his social media account X, addressed to President Javier Milei, who was having dinner in the presidential residency with former President Mauricio Macri. 4 minutes later, the President's office announced that the President had accepted his resignation and appointed presidential spokesman Manuel Adorni to replace him, who will take office on Monday. In Mexico, farmers expressed concern about the harvest of the traditional flower of the Day of the Dead in the face of climate change. For years on end, heavy rains, floods, and drought related to climate change have devastated the flower crops in the area of Xochimilco, south of Mexico City, the traditional Semanpochico flower on the Day of the Dead in Mexico, covering altars and cemeteries, guiding the souls of the dead to their living family members during the first 2 days of November. The agricultural sector continues to work to preserve native seeds, which, together with specialized scientists, seeks to generate genetic diversity in the hopes that these hardier strains can help farmers rebuild crops and protect Mexico's iconic bloom from the growing impacts of climate change. In other news, in Honduras, following a meeting held between the General Coordination in the Central District and the Liberty and Refundation Party, the order was given to call on all party members to mobilize to the capital starting on November 9th. Presidential candidate Rexy Moncada assured that the protests since November 9th will be permanent and that the national militancy will make a one-way trip to their hometowns. This comes after the leaking of the audio recordings that reveal a boycott, attack, and destruction of the popular sovereignty by imposing the results of the November 30 election. Moncada added that they received an expert opinion from judicial investigator and criminalistic expert Jason Villamil, who assured them that the leaked audio recordings are authentic. Moving now to Chile, the 2025 Pan American Games in Chile will award their first medals on Saturday in the discipline of para table tennis, which is being played in the city of Rengo in the O'Higgins region. On Saturday, there will be semifinals and finals in categories 1 to 5 for both men and women, where athletes competing in wheelchairs will be. The highest degree on disability is in Group 1 and the lowest in Group 5. The winners of the Group 6 to 10, corresponding to standing athletes with various degrees of physical disabilities, will also be awarded. The 2025 Pan American Youth Games in Chile bring together nearly 1,000 athletes from 27 countries and will conclude on Sunday, November 9th. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on the website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.